You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, and thanks for coming on to the Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, for the penultimate episode of this particular journey. We're taking you out of the 100-mile wilderness right to the foothills, as it were, of Katahdin today, and we're leaving Katahdin for the last episode, which hopefully will be out either Friday or Saturday, and I intend to summit on Friday the 23rd. It's been such a blast for me to be able to do this, and I'm glad you've been along with me on the journey. Normal service will be resumed next Thursday, hopefully, with another interview in the show, a new book, Paul Stutzman's Hiking Through, and another little section I'm working on. So I've got plenty to do in the coming couple of days before our next episode goes out. I did consider taking a week out, but no, I think I'm going to try to get an episode out next Thursday to provide some continuity so that you can all get your feel of the Appalachian Trail. As I said, this is these 4 days I'm going to let you hear now are what's happened in these 4 days, and to have got us where we are, ready to go up Katahdin. So let's move on to day number 175. Day number 175, which was last Monday, I'll keep getting these days wrong, don't I? I have no idea what it was. Monday the something anyway, something 18th or 19th of August. Our stealth site just beyond Logan, or my stealth site just beyond Logan Brook Lean-To, mile 2120.7, to Antlers Campsite, mile 2140.3, a 19.6 mile day. Now that we had passed the main mountains in the 100-mile wilderness, we had a kind of clear path to the end. It's never clear. You know what it's like. You know, it's the profile looks clear, but there's always ups and there's always down, there's always rocks, there's always roots. But we just needed to put in some pretty big days. This was the plan that had been given to us at Shores by Poet, who runs Shores, how we would be able to get to finish on Friday the 23rd. And part of this was meeting his team, or one guy from his team, with a food resupply at Joe Mary Road at 4 p.m. on that particular day. So getting the logistics right for this is not as difficult as it sounds, but you had to buy into the concept and you had to make sure you made those miles, because if you didn't, you're going to miss the food drop. We could have changed the date, the time rather, but, we would have struggled to make Friday our climbing, Katahdin. As I said to you before, that nobody really wants to do this on a weekend. It gets incredibly busy here, apparently. So this was going to be a near 20 miler. And, so we didn't really need to rush. We always get up early. We got up, I think, about, 5 o'clock every day, pretty much every day. Try to get out at 6:30, 6:45. It's often 7 o'clock, to be fair. But because of the profile, we had to do 16 miles in about 9 hours, which was very, very doable. In fact, we actually got there in 8 hours. But even though we don't have to rush, it's funny when you start hiking, and anybody who's done this for any extended period of time, you get into the rhythm of your hike. And I don't think you can deliberately slow that down. Your rhythm is what your rhythm is. You are moving at the pace at which you're moving. I tend to lead these days, and Trigger is behind me, and he's happy to go along that pace. And we move along at a fair old clip. We have had lots of breaks recently, particularly when we know that there was, like, we knew this was a particular meet point. We knew we had to be at a certain pace. So we didn't want to get there too early. So we had quite a few breaks, and at one stage we stopped at a shelter. I actually dozed off, which was kind of nice as well. So the profile looked great for us. Little Boardman Mountain took us back up to 2,000 feet after a couple of miles, but really the rest of the day looked quite flat. But as I say, it never really is flat. And there's always these undulations, which sometimes can go up 50, 100 feet and not really register on the profile, and yet they're there because they come back down again. So because where the points in the profile are taken, they don't register. It may be at 600 feet at point 1, goes up to 650, then back straight down to 600 again within a tenth of a mile, and nobody would notice, and the profile wouldn't reflect that. So don't ever think it's completely flat, but it certainly was a lot easier. And frankly, the fact that we're going to be climbing this massive 5,000 foot mountain at the end of this is quite useful to keep getting your legs exercise for going uphill. So I kind of like that as well. The rocks and roots have been disastrous for me in this rain. I've fallen over several times now, and I think my falls number would have been considerably less had it not been for the rocks and roots. And I tend to fall over, actually, I take so much care on the rocks and roots, I tend to fall over in the mud. The mud slides and I'm gone. I'm just gone instantly. So, that they are very, very slick. And the boardwalks, the little mini, which are basically logs, laid across the ground, and you have to walk across those, and they're so slippery, and if they're at an angle you can easily fall off, and I've slipped a few times on them as well. The food pickup, as I say, was at Joe Mary Road, and we got there an hour ahead of schedule. They were already there, and we took our food. They gave us a beer, which was great. We downed that pretty quickly, and we hurried on. The Colonel and Sweetwater, around whom we've been hiking quite a bit recently, they were just ahead of us, and they got to Antler's campsite ahead of us as well. And the family were there as well, the family who we spoke to in the last episode. They just wanted to hang out with people, and it's great. They got this young lad, Destroyer. He always says, and so do the girls, by the way. They always say, "Hi, Mighty Blue. Hi, Trigger." They feel, and this young Destroyer was saying, "You're part of our family now." And the feeling of inclusion is so wonderful on this trail, and this is such a great family to spend time with as well. So they actually were intending to stay a little bit earlier, but they came onto this campsite. But the mosquitoes, or gnats, or whatever you call them over here, they are horrendous there. It's right by a lake, and they were biting us all the time. Sorry, I'm tired. I yawned. And so much so that we all retired to our tents pretty quickly and tried to keep the mozzies out, and I killed a couple in the tent and went to sleep. But that was the end of a very satisfactory day, because we kept our mileage up. Day number 175. Day number 176, which is last Tuesday, and which I think makes it the 20th. Yeah, 20th of August. Antler's campsite, mile 2140.3 to Rainbow Stream Lean-To, mile 2161.9, a 21.6 mile day. Once again, we knew the plan, and we knew that we needed another ambitious day if we were going to complete the trail on Friday. This time, it was nearly 22 miles, and I wasn't looking forward to it, but, we'd handled the 20 the day before. My feet are starting to get really busted up. I've developed a very attractive bunion, I think it is, on my left foot, the outside of my by my big toe. All of my toenails are either black or hanging on like a thread, and my feet just look. I'm looking at them now actually while I'm recording, and wow, they've been smashed up. But you know what? My knees are very strong. I felt some twinges every now and then in my knees, but really, and everybody must feel twinges. They don't look swollen at all. And my feet, I think they're numb in quite a few places, and I'll need to have some work done on my feet at some stage, I think, in the near future, because my toenails are a bit of a shambles, The profile with this 22-mile days was still encouraging, though we did have yet another mountain to go over, having kept being told that we were running out of mountains, and there's another one. It's called Nesuntabunt Mountain. It's not very big, actually, to be fair. And there were other rises and falls, but the rocks and the roots were still drying out from the earlier rain. So everything continued to be difficult. And this whole 100-mile wilderness, and I think I may have mentioned last time, I went through the 100-mile wilderness the first time, slack-packed the first 4 days, went back to Monson each night. Didn't do it this time, took a 4-pack this time, and I've really, really enjoyed the experience. It is so different from the experience I had first time. And to treat it as a wilderness, which it kind of is, you can get off, but to treat it as wilderness, take your, even though we did get a resupply, take most of your food with you. Every morning, sleep in a tent or in a lean-to. Every night, rather, sleep in a tent or a lean-to. And pretty much every morning, wake up with damp clothes from the night before. It's a test, no question. And some of these, particularly these youngsters who are doing this on a tight budget, they have a tough time. There's no question. And Trigger and I have definitely had it easier than a lot of people doing this. But, it's our hike, so we're doing it the way we want to do it. Once again, the roots, this time it was a root that got me, and I fell for fall number 42, and I slipped on this wet root and fell into a clump of small bushes. And I was trying to save myself. I bent my new lecky pole. I don't know what I told you, actually. When I was at, what's it called? One of the gaps back in New Hampshire, I'd bought my old lecky poles there when one of my other poles broke on the previous mountain. So those lecky poles I had for the whole of this trip until now, and from whatever the name of this gap was, it begins with a P, I've forgotten it now. This gap to the end of Katahdin last time, I'd used those same lecky poles. So those lecky poles had completed the through hike, but they were getting pretty messy. And I thought I wanted to be safe for the end of this journey. I bought myself a new lecky poles, and I've now bent one of them already. It's still usable, but it's pretty badly bent. And the day also reminded me why I loved Namakanta Lake last time so much. I've got so many great memories of that place last time, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful lake, little rocky beach which we sat on last time, and Trigger and I went out and sat there for 10-15 minutes this time while a couple were taking their canoe out of the water and taking it away, and it's just a glorious place to be. And there was once we got up in this Sunderland mountain, there was this rock slab on the downside with great views of the lake and of Katahdin. And I think this was the first time we'd seen Katahdin because the weather had been bad. And Trigger's reaction on seeing the mountain was really interesting. He thought he was going to be very emotional when he saw Katahdin for the first time, but he wasn't. He felt resentful. Isn't that interesting? He was resentful, he said, because, this has caused him this trip while he's enjoyed it and so on. And I think he's delighted he's done it. He's very delighted it's almost over, as am I. And he said he resented it because this is the target he's been facing the whole time, and he was seeing it for the first time. And he's had so much pain and he's fallen over so many times recently. He's not nowhere near me, but he's about 25 or 26 now. And that was his feeling, resentful. So I thought that's quite interesting, actually. We'd been on this particular day. The routes had worn us out, and our final approach to Rainbow Stream Lean-To seemed endless because it was a fairly but kind of definite rise over the last 2 or 3 miles before we got there. And we were so tired when we got there. And at the camp were steaks, Fireball and a husband, 5 o'clock. And to my absolute personal delight, Marcus and his delightful family. And then the Colonel and Sweetwater, who had been hiking with us, went on a further few miles. And it was only the next day I learned what their plan was. They were planning to do a 25 or 26 mile that day. And then they were going to do another 25 the next day to get not only to Abel Bridge, but to get into the park to Baxter State and climb up today. Well, I'm now recording this on Thursday. Climb up on Thursday when we knew the weather was going to be lousy. Sweetwater had had a family bereavement. His mother-in-law had passed, and he knew he wouldn't get back for the funeral, but he's now going to get back for the evening of the funeral, and it's going to be a surprise to his wife. and I'm sure she doesn't listen to this now I think about it. But it was a plan they developed, and for two guys in their 60s, man, they are pushing it. 26-mile day and then a 27-mile day, but good for them. I tented around. I tented again on this day. I love being back in my tent. And after we all sat around and we had dinner, but that was the end of another strong day for us. Both Trigger and I, nearly 22-mile days at our age, at day 176. So that is the end of day number 176. Day number 177, which is Wednesday or yesterday, as I record this, August the 21st, Rainbow Stream Lean-To, mile 2161.9 to Abel Bridge, mile 2176.9, just a 15-mile day, and our daily mileage is now starting to reduce. The previous day's exertions had got us in the position to complete the hike by Friday. We knew what was going to happen. We knew also that Friday was looking like a 10% or even a 0% chance of rain. And so, as a consequence, we were kind of relaxed about it. And our 15-miler, when we did it yesterday, was relatively easy, with just the climb up to Rainbow Ledges, the only real exertion. And the rocks and roots still keep you concentrating, but we've got used to them by now. We were kept amused, though, by this huge lake, Rainbow Lake. It was on our left for about 6 miles. It's a really massive lake. And we were regularly entertained by the takeoff and landing of a seaplane. We thought they were just showing off. It was funny, actually. Suddenly we heard this roaring noise, and I'd never seen a seaplane take off, live. It's quite a majestic sight. And then 5 minutes later, or probably more like 20 minutes later, it comes circling around and it lands and it takes off again. And as I learned later, it's probably fishermen coming in, trying to fish these waters in a quite accessible place. They clearly couldn't be bothered with walking 100 miles or several miles into the wilderness to get there. And they get seaplaned in. But it's another great privilege. It's not a nature thing, I know, but it's a great privilege to see something you don't normally see. Landing so elegantly on this beautiful lake. And it's funny because every time the plane would come in, you could hear the birds going crazy, making a heck of a noise. So as if to say, get out of the way, get out, they're coming down again. And that did make us laugh. It must have done it 5 or 6 times. The Herd Brook Lean-To took us to the very last page of the AWOL guide. Don't really know about the guides. Last time I did this hike, I used the Through Hiker's Companion, I think from the ATC. This time I was luckily given a copy of the AWOL guide, so I tried that out. But I also use gut hooks, and gut hooks has always also been very useful. It gives you an exact. You've got a GPS, so you know exactly where you are. So if you get lost, you'll know about it pretty quickly. And it enables you to get back on trail. But both books have got great value as far as I'm concerned, and I've thoroughly enjoyed using the combination of the two of them to get information on where to stay, on phone numbers, and all that sort of thing, which is really helpful when planning your hike. And you only have to look a few days ahead in advance, so to work out where you want to be. And they've been excellent for me. And I would say also I did enjoy using the Through Hiker's Companion in the past, but this was the day we turned over the very last page, so we could see we were at Herd Brook Lean-To, and you can see a profile on the page of the line of the path going down and going up, going down, and then right at the end of the page, it just goes vertically up to Katahdin. So we knew that was coming on that page. And then I developed a bit of a plan as I was walking along, and I shared it with Trigger, and I'll share it with you now, actually. We knew that rain was coming, and we've managed our ability to get out of the rain pretty well so far. It was coming that afternoon. This was Wednesday afternoon. So we knew that if we set up somewhere near Abel Bridge, we'd be setting up in the rain. Or if we weren't setting up in the rain, we'd be packing up in the rain tomorrow morning. Because the other thing, and this has annoyed me, is this registration for the birches. I'm sure there's a very good reason for this, but they only allow 12 hikers going northbound, through hikers, or anybody who's actually done the 100-mile wilderness, to register to stay in the campground for $10, by the way, at the Birches. Now, I started to get stressed about this because I thought, what if we don't get up early enough? What time do we need to get up? Do we need to get up 2:30 in the morning to register? Do we have to get up? What do we do? We didn't really know what to do. So I thought to myself, well, if we don't worry about registering, because there were quite a few people around us who wanted to go in on Friday, and people want to get in on Friday because they don't want to go up at the weekend. It's difficult to get places to stay and all that sort of stuff. So I got stressed about it, annoyingly stressed about it, and I was annoyed about it that a park as huge as Baxter didn't provide nobos with more spaces. If there's a bubble behind us, some people can be very, very upset if they can't get into the park. So I was concerned about this anyway. So I said to Trig, why don't we just go into Millinocket? There's lots of great advantages. There's the AT High Castle there, which we actually went to. We can then just use the pack that we need of just some snacks and some water and some warm clothes for our last 10 miles from Abel Bridge into Baxter. And obviously we're going to go up Katahdin with a small pack as well. We'd miss packing up our tent in the rain. We wouldn't have to sleep in our tent anymore. It's only $50 a night anyway. And we get the chance of a good meal for breakfast and for dinner. And Trigger as soon as I said that, Trigger was immediately sold on the idea. And so we came, we got to Abel Bridge, and you get out of the 100-mile wilderness, and it's kind of, you emerge onto this road. You've been in there 100 miles, and it feels like it has been a wilderness. It does this time, as I say, not so much like last time, but this time it really feels that way. And you walk along this golden road towards the restaurant, and you cross this tiny little, actually pretty crummy little bridge, and there is this magnificent view of Katahdin to your left. You must have seen it. You've seen all the photos. It looks fabulous. And there it was, Katahdin. It looked great. So we had lunch there. We chatted with a couple who were having lunch, and I, in my very subtle or unsubtle English way, said we were looking for a lift into Millinocket. And they said, oh, we can take you there. So they took us all the way to Millinocket. And then, because Sweetwater and the Colonel had gone all the way then into Baxter, we met them at the same place, and we had dinner with them. So that was a great day. And we were out the 100-mile wilderness. And that's the end of day number 177. Day number 178, Thursday the 22nd of August, today, Abel Bridge, mile 2176.9 to Katahdin Stream Campground, mile 2186.8, just a 9.9 mile day. We had breakfast in Millinocket, and then we got an 8:45 shuttle, kind of nice to do that, back to Abel Bridge. We started off pretty briskly at about 9:30 and soon came to the registration hut for the Birches, where I was so concerned about getting a spot. You know, had we been staying that night, this is at 9:30, by the way. There were still two places available, so we could have stayed there had we wanted to. But that's the way it goes. I still think they've got an issue that needs to be addressed. They cannot have northbound through hikers. One day 20 might come through. What are they going to do? I just think it's unfair. I think it's ridiculous, and I think they need to sort it out. But that's rant over. It's only a mini rant, and I'm not complaining. And I love the way all these people run these places. And I must say the person who registered us on this particular day was so helpful. I find in general terms these people are so darn helpful. They're just following the rules, and I entirely understand. But man, come on, think about it sometimes. The first 3 miles of the hike were just laden with pine needles, and it was kind of like a soft, springy little walk. And I thought, this is going to be great. We're going to get in there with no problem at all. And we started to think that our friends' warnings of more rocks and roots was a fabrication. A few of them interrupted our progress, but nowhere near as bad as we'd seen in the past. And this was a simple 10-miler, and it took us about 3.5 hours. And it started to spit with rain, and we could see, when we first were at Abel, we could see there was cloud on top of the mountain, and we knew the forecast for rain was coming in as well, and it got heavier and heavier. And when we got to Katahdin Stream Camp, we saw our friends and fellow summittees tomorrow, which of course is the people I said before. Steak, I'm going to get them all wrong now. It's terrible. 5 o'clock and his wife, Fireball, and of course the family, all 5 of them. They were all there and they were just hanging out. It was a funny day today because we did our 10 miles at 1 o'clock. And really, I suppose we could have gone up then, but it would have taken 4 hours to get up, 4 hours to get down. We probably wouldn't have been able to make it in time. So it felt like almost a Nero, even though we were so close to the end. And to see these our friends who are going to go up with us tomorrow, they just had to hang around the campground. And there is nothing to do there, by the way, other than hike, obviously. Sitting in these picnic tables undercover, which was great, obviously. Having registered and just waiting for tomorrow. But I'm sure they were fine. We registered, and I'm number 396 to register this year. And Trigger was number 397. I want to talk to you about Trigger for a minute. Trigger is a strong silent type, let me say. We don't talk about much at all. We're completely opposed to each other politically, and he believes everything in the Bible. None of which I believe, as you know. And so we can't talk on that level at all. But I can tell you, he has got me here faster than I would ever have got here. I think I'm a lazy person, lazy hiker anyway, at the least. And I think his determination to get home quicker, he always wants to do an extra mile. And it's been really, really helpful to me. I've got to tell you, I think I've been helpful to him as well, because logistically he's hopeless. He's relied upon me to do everything. And I'm fine with that now. And I understand that's what he wants as well. We are an unusual partnership, but I can tell you the partnership I think has worked really, really well. And I couldn't be happier that, I'm ending this hike with a guy I've been hiking with now for 1,700 miles. So, kudos to Trigger for putting up with me and for me to put up with him as well, because the two of us are very, very different in so many ways. As I said, the Colonel and Sweetwater had already climbed Katahdin and the rain started to come down heavier and heavier. And we started to get a little bit worried about them. We were hoping they'd got up quick enough so that they could then get down and get below tree line, because once you get above tree line, you are exposed. And the winds up there are pretty bad as well. And so we weren't going to see them, because we knew it would take them quite a while to come down. We wanted to get back to Millinocket, so we went to Hitchback, and as we kind of expected it would, the very first car that came past stopped and took us all the way there. I started engaging them with in conversation about through hikers. And one thing all of us have noticed, I think, the nearer we've got to Katahdin and the end of this trip, is how people are so pleased for our success. If they're day hikers, or they're just visitors, or they're section hikers, they say, congratulations, well done, on doing this trip. And you feel pretty great about it. As I keep saying, we haven't finished yet. And I know it's only another 4 or 5 miles, but we haven't finished yet. And we need to be there before we can say we're through hikers again. Then the Colonel and Sweetwater returned about 5:30. They were wet but triumphant. And we all went out to dinner to celebrate. That's the end of day number 178. So hopefully you're up to date. You've been through the 100-mile wilderness with me. I'm trying something tomorrow which may be a complete disaster, in which case, if it's that bad, I'm not going to release it. But I will then tell you how it went going up Katahdin. My plan is to mic myself up and just climb Katahdin, and every now and then record what I'm seeing, what's happening and how it's going. And Ryan, as I said, is in London right now. He's going to put this episode out early Friday morning. And hopefully that will go out early Friday morning. And then my climbing Katahdin episode may even get out later Friday afternoon. I don't know actually how that will work out, but at the very worst, it'll be Saturday morning. And I hope you join me on that journey. You've stayed with me for all this time. It's been, It's over too soon for me suddenly. We got into Maine, we knew it, we had 280 miles to think about the finish, and suddenly you're in the 100-mile wilderness, and suddenly you're out of it, and suddenly there you are. You're looking at Katahdin and ready to go up it. For those of you following us, following on behind us, and if you're listening to this podcast, enjoy these last moments. Stay in the moment and really be aware of where you are and how close you are to the end, and keep concentrating, because you don't want to fall and injure yourself right towards the end. But at the same time, just enjoy them, because these are great days, and Maine is a wonderful state, and I've thoroughly enjoyed going through it. I think it's my favourite of all the states. Not spectacular in some ways as New Hampshire, but such a variety other than the flipping routes. I mean, the routes are just all over the place. They're a nightmare. But, this is the Appalachian Trail. If it was easy, everybody would do it. The reason everybody doesn't do it is because it's not easy. It is a darn hard thing to do. And hopefully tomorrow you're going to hear what it's like to climb the biggest mountain. And I hope you join me. I'll see you next time.